Hi, this is Rick from For Community, creating community spaces so you can connect with others and also with God. One of the things that I love to do in my other profession of being a psychotherapist is working with couples. And I find that there is a common couples dynamic. There is a pursuer and there is a withdrawer. Within almost every couples client that I have, there's one person who is leaning toward the other person, pursuing them, trying to figure out, is there somebody else here in the relationship with me? And then the other person tends to be withdrawer. As the person pursues, the withdrawer sees that as kind of attacking, and they will shell up and they'll stop being vulnerable. And the longer the person stops being vulnerable, the greater the volume increases with the pursuer. So that the pursuer is like, hello, is anybody there? To the point where the pursuer is coming on very strongly, hello, open up that shell. And one of the things that I do with clients is to gently encourage the withdrawer. If you would like to calm down your pursuer a little bit and increase your relationship, you need to actually move into some form of vulnerability. Because when vulnerability is spotted, then the pursuer is going to see what the pursuer wants. And generally, the pursuer just wants to know that they have a partner in their relationship. I wonder if you see this dynamic playing out in any of your relationships. Maybe with your relationship with your own spouse. You see that one of you tends to be the pursuer and the other one tends to be the withdrawer. Or maybe in your friends circle, or maybe at work, you see that some people are the pursuers and maybe they're seen as the extroverts. And other people are the withdrawers that don't really give up a whole lot of information. You got to pry it out of them, and maybe they would be slightly more introverted. If you are watching with someone, can you just take a moment and share with that person the relationship you're thinking about and share whether you are the pursuer or whether you are the withdrawer? In relationships that have this pursuer-withdrawer dynamic, the behaviors of the pursuer and the behaviors of the withdrawer tend to block the growth of that couple. They don't get the attachment that they want from each other. And not only does it work in couples, it can also block your growth in God as well. This video is based on 1 Peter chapter 2, verses 1 through 3. In this passage, we see some comments around behavior. The behavior that is likely to be seen in this pursuer-withdrawer relationship, where the relationship isn't growing, but it's hurting, and people's needs are not getting met. 1 Peter chapter 2, verses 1 through 3. So get rid of all evil behavior. Be done with all deceit, hypocrisy, jealousy, and all unkind speech. Like newborn babies, you must crave pure spiritual milk so that you will grow into a full experience of salvation. Cry out for this nourishment now that you have had a taste of the Lord's kindness.
Hello, would you like anything else with your croissant?
Yes, coffee, please.
Coming right up. Oh, careful, the coffee's hot.
Okay, thank you.
No problem. Have you watched the For Community video yet?
No.
Well, make sure you look in the background for all the cool characters. And kids, don't forget to watch this week's episode of Connect HQ.
Okay. The link to the Connect HQ video is found in the description.
Here's the point I'm going to try to make around this text. This is my interpretation of this text. Start with the heart. Understanding where behaviors that hurt marriages and other relationships come from is going to help. So start with the heart. I can also say it like this. Underneath every behavior is an emotion. Underneath every emotion is a need, generally an attachment need. So start with the heart. This idea helps us to understand what drives a couple, what drives friends, a board, a team, customer service relationships even. It helps us to understand why relationships escalate and what can be done to de-escalate. It gives us some predictability of outcome when we see things through this lens. Underneath every behavior is an emotion. Underneath every emotion is a need. In this text, we see a focus on a few behaviors. They're highlighted here not because they're the most horrible things in the universe, and you're going to hell if you do these things. These behaviors are the kind of behaviors that can push people and God away from you and strip you of your chances to live a life that includes deep, meaningful, and long-lasting relationships. When we see, for example, hypocrisy, that's pretty ugly, and we want to avoid hypocrites. When we see someone who deceives us, it hurts and makes us want to retaliate or avoid that person. When we experience somebody speaking unkindly towards us, it hurts. Maybe makes us want to get defensive and lash out, and it motivates us to stay away from that person. The behaviors mentioned here in this text and other similar behaviors are behaviors that drive people away from each other and drive us away from God. So I'm going to say it like this. If we're acting in ways like this, we will eventually find ourselves in a place where it's impossible to get our needs met because we're generally driving people and driving God away from us. Can we drive God away from us? Okay, let's ask that in 4 questions. Does God love us? Yes. Does God have unconditional love for us? Yes. Do these behaviors help us to connect with God in a way that we can feel and really experience his love for us? No. Does God offer us unconditional relationship, allowing us to treat him any way we want to? No. The problem with the behaviors mentioned and others like this is they set us up on a trajectory that takes us farther away from living a life that is truly satisfying and truly meaningful and not lonely. When we believe that a deep attachment need isn't being met, that generates a negative emotion, which generates a negative behavior, and we end up hurting ourselves, we end up hurting the people around us, and we end up hurting our relationship with God. So here's what I have for us. I have 3 points to share with you around the idea of start with the heart. Let's start right here. Let's talk about behavior. The text says, so get rid of all evil behavior. I want to alert you to something called the negative cycle. When I do couples therapy, I love using EFT as a grounding modality. It's not the only thing that I use, but I find it certainly helpful to integrate in all the other things that I do. In particular, I like tracking a couple's negative cycle. For example, person A may choose to confront. Person B may then become defensive and raise a voice. Person A then may choose to build a case to support their confrontational point. Person B then may choose to use a rubber man tactic. What you say bounces off of me and sticks to you. My behavior is really your fault. Person A may then escalate into yelling, and person B may then continue the yelling while withdrawing at the same time. And then the two of them drift off and become totally alone. What I find is that the topics can change, the context can change, but the cycle generally stays the same. The negative cycle really is a style of arguing that a couple can fall into. The names, context, everything can change, but the cycle generally repeats. The behaviors don't bring the couple toward each other. Actually, of course, the behaviors drive them away. So when the text says, get rid of all evil behavior, I think this is how we can interpret it in a helpful way that doesn't feel like we're being judged so much, that doesn't feel like the Bible is just a rule book telling us how to live and how not to live. Our evil behavior doesn't come from a vacuum without context and totally random. We tend to repeat our behaviors. We tend to get in the habit of behaving in certain ways. And that cycle that we're in tends to be like the negative cycle a couple in crisis gets into, driving each other apart. There are things that we do repeatedly that hurts our connection with God. So the focus here is on recognizing the damage our behavior is causing. Our negative behavior prevents us from having the fulfilled life of a meaningful, attached relationship to God that we truly need. This is a heads up here that something is wrong, But what do we do about this? Do we focus on the behavior, or is there another place to go that will help us to calm that behavior down and de-escalate? Let's talk about emotion. The text says deceit, hypocrisy, jealousy, and all unkind speech. Underneath the negative cycle, underneath the behaviors that we see are emotions. Let's just start with confrontation. When I can slow a couple down, what I find underneath, or what I may find underneath the confrontation, is a deep emotional reaction, probably reacting to the feeling of abandonment or aloneness or just being unloved. The reason of the behavior is this emotion of maybe abandonment. So, person A may say, I'm confronting you on this particular thing because you completely abandoned me. You're so consumed with your hobby, with your drinking, with your friends, with your motorcycle, work, party friends, name it, whatever, that you leave me behind, and I don't feel that we really have a relationship. It's like you're treating me like I'm a pet, or you're taking me for granted, or it's like I'm not even in this relationship. The emotion is what makes sense of the behavior. So this text gives us these behavioral examples: deceit, hypocrisy, jealousy, and all unkind speech. I wonder what emotions are driving these. I mean, if we're acting out of jealousy, then the emotion is pretty clear, or is it? Sometimes the feeling underneath jealousy is a feeling of abandonment. I feel abandoned because I see others' needs are getting met and others have partners that are supportive and responsive, but I'm here all alone and needing to fend for myself because no one is there for me. And the one person that I chose to do life with is not choosing to do life with me anymore. I'm being treated like I don't matter. So underneath the activity, the behavior related to jealousy may actually be feelings of abandonment and worthlessness. What about deceit? Under deceit could actually be a feeling of deep despair, because in that person's family of origin, maybe they had 4 siblings and they were the middle child, so no one ever came to their defense. They felt a sense of worthlessness and they felt so unsafe. If they didn't do something to make sure that they got their needs met, then mom and dad would never notice, and maybe their older siblings were picking on them a little bit, and maybe the 2 younger siblings were treated like gold. So they adopted a pattern of deceit in order to get the support that they needed. The feeling of insecurity may lie under deceitful behavior. What about unkindness? Let's just say a teen who's never had great parents is now getting bullied at school and feeling despair and hopelessness. No one's there to help. They're all alone. But instead of getting depressed about it, they do what they had to do as a child, and they get tough and they stand up for themselves. They treat others unkindly because they feel hopeless and they believe that they live in a world that's not safe. So no one can be trusted. There is an emotion found underneath all of our behaviors that make our behaviors make sense. If we start trying to clean up our behaviors and we don't look any deeper than that, we're going to miss some of the softer parts of us that are being covered up by that behavior. And those softer parts of us, if we don't recognize them, they're going to need a new behavior shield. Because if we only work on the behaviors and we don't look at the emotions underneath those, we take away the behaviors, suddenly we are exposed and vulnerable. We don't like it, so we're going to go back into doing some pretty negative behaviors again. Underneath those emotions, deeper still, are needs, namely attachment needs. So let's talk about our needs. The text says, crave pure spiritual milk. When a couple is in a negative loop, it's easy to see their behavior. They're yelling, they're fighting, they're confronting, they're doing whatever. When we slow down and mind the behavior, we tend to see emotions. They're hurt. They feel abandoned. They feel a sense of worthlessness. They feel unloved. For person A, who is confrontational, underneath that confrontation, a feeling of abandonment and unworthiness. The need then, underneath that emotion, is to be loved. If they believe that they are loved, then the feelings of abandonment won't be there and won't inspire the behavior of confrontation. When a couple can recognize that their negative cycle is really fueled by unmet attachment needs, they can begin to work on serving each other in meaningful ways to meet each other's attachment needs, and then they both will be fulfilled, and these negative emotions will no longer be present, driving these negative behaviors that are driving them apart. The text uses the phrase crave spiritual milk. Underneath the behaviors mentioned in this text is an example which may be generated by your belief that you're unloved, unworthy, unwanted. And it's just not true. God does love you. God does want you. You are worthy of his attention and a connection with him. Rather than devote a video to tell you to stop acting in ways that you already know you shouldn't be acting in, let me encourage you by saying that those things that you truly crave, you can actually get. The stability, the safety, the love, the sense of value, the sense of worth, they're all there for you. God's got all of that for you. You don't have to be missing out because they are there for you. If you find yourself reflecting on your behaviors and saying, wow, why am I acting like that? I really need to tone that down. I'm really, not having friends anymore. I'm driving people away from me. Maybe don't start with the behavior. Maybe start with the heart. Connect with Jesus. His love and the sense of worth that he has for you is able to ground you. When you ground in the love that God has for you, it helps those negative emotions go away, which then will help those negative behaviors go away, because the behaviors will no longer make sense when the emotions are no longer there to fuel them. Then at that point, we are less likely to drive people away, and you're less likely to be alone. And you're more likely to be on a journey toward the fulfilling life that you really want to be living. Here is the takeaway. Start with the heart. Underneath every behavior is an emotion. Underneath every emotion is a need, namely an attachment need. So start with the heart. Find your grounding in Jesus' love for you so that your life changes from the inside out. Because changing from the outside in is missing the softer and really important parts of you, and it's really hard to change that way. Start with the heart. Start with Jesus and his love for you. That's it from me to you for now. Would you please like? Would you please share? Would you please subscribe? Would you please also ask for the link? We meet 3 times now on Sundays, one at 10 a.m. on Zoom, one at 3 p.m. at a local community center, and one at 6 p.m. on Zoom again. If you'd like to contribute, would you please just go down to the show notes. You'll see a link right there for community, creating community spaces so that you can connect with others and also with God. See you next time.